Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Nicole here and I have a beautiful mixed media tag perfect for fall. It's not specific to Thanksgiving, so it's something that you can keep up for a few months until you change out your decorations for the winter. I'm breaking out each step of this project so you can recreate it too. Let's get started with some beautiful crafting. I started with a number 8 thickboard tag and I have a piece of decorative paper already attached to it. So I'm taking my all-purpose ink in bright copper along with a paintbrush and just painting the edge all the way around this tag. Adding this little bit of copper isn't necessary, but it is going to bring the idea of copper all the way through this project. You're going to see copper in little elements here and there, then it makes the difference in every little element that it's a part of. So as I go down the edge here, I make sure that I have it all completely covered, and then I'll just kind of come back up and make sure I don't have any little gloops of paint, and then wipe off the top and the bottom to make sure that I don't have any spillage on either side. I'll continue on around the whole tag until it's complete. Then I'm going to come in with a stencil and add in some of that copper to the front here. So now you can see that the copper is starting to go through onto the next layer, which is the top of this tag. I'm going to add in a whole bunch of copper, and it actually kind of spilled up underneath the stencil, and that ended up being okay because a lot of it's going to get covered by the elements above it, and it also just gives some extra texture there, so I wasn't too concerned about that. The next step is to create all of these beautiful chipboard leaves. I wanted to use VersaFine Clair, but when I put it onto the chipboard directly, it kind of soaked in and had a dull color. So I started off with Stays-On pigment in Snowflake to kind of prime the leaves. This gives me two things. One, it gives me a white base to work from, and two, it gives me a little bit of a barrier in between the paint and the chipboard so that it doesn't soak in and turn into a dull color. So I set them aside to dry, and when they were dry, they were ready for the VersaFine Clair. It takes them just a few minutes to dry, so it's not like I'm waiting around all day. This also gave the VersaFine Clair a little bit longer drying time, which worked out well for the iridescent embossing powder. So I am working on each of these leaves and doing them in all slightly different color patterns, just like you would find out in nature. For this little leaf here, I started off with Cheerful, moved into Golden Meadow, and then ended up with Shady Lane. And when I wanted to blend the colors, I just used my pinky finger as a dauber to blend out those lines and give a beautiful blend on the ink. So I decided that I would kind of batch these all up, and I wanted to get the embossing powder on them before the ink dried. So as I go along, I'm going to go ahead and add on that embossing powder and then set the leaf aside. Now I did mention that the VersaFine Clair took a little bit longer to dry, so I had this one completed already and just needed to add some embossing powder to it, and it was still damp enough that the embossing powder stuck without any problem. So now I'll move into some other fun color combinations. On this little maple leaf, I'm using Summertime and Tulip Red, and it creates this fiery little maple leaf. And again, blending out the two colors with my pinky finger worked perfectly. I didn't need any special tools, and that is really helpful when you're just trying to get something done fairly quickly. I already had gloves on, so why not just use the tools at hand? For this next leaf, I'm using Cheerful to start off with, and then I'll move into Summertime and Tulip Red to make it into a fiery oak leaf. So oak leaves aren't quite like maple leaves. They tend to be more brown and don't really get as vibrant as maple leaves do. But because they're paper, I can make them whatever I want them to be. So if I would like it to be a little bit more fiery, I can do that. I left a little bit more yellow on this one, and it's going to look absolutely gorgeous when it has all of that iridescent sparkle to it. For the last oak leaf, I'm going to go a little bit more realistic. I'm going to start off with that same Summertime orange and then add in a whole bunch of Tulip Red. And I'm going to want to go for more browns on this one. So I'll add in that Tulip Red, and then instead of putting brown straight up onto this leaf, I'm going to add in the Shady Lane green. This is going to give me a brownish green, which is a little bit more natural, I think. Because the leaf started off green and started to turn brown in the end, it really brings that greenish brown shade into play, which is very natural looking. So again, I'm just blending that out with my fingers, and it really gives this that realistic look that it's got some browns and some oranges and reds, and it's changing colors. So then once I have all of them done, I go ahead and put them on a piece of silicone mat and heat them up. And the embossing is pretty straightforward here. When the iridescent emboss dries, it is clear with a beautiful iridescent sparkle to it. So all the colors from the VersaFine Clair show through absolutely gorgeously. They stay bright and vibrant because of the StazOn pigment we put underneath, and they just look beautiful. So I wanted to have some other kinds of leaves on my project. So I took a few of those oak leaves and I added just the bright copper all-purpose ink to them, and I wanted to make them look oxidized. So I took some creative medium and just dabbed it on with my fingers. There I go again with that finger technique. It really does work in this case because I didn't want it to be smooth. I wanted it to have this kind of textured feel to it, and the more creative medium I added to give it more texture, the better. So I just dabbed on a whole bunch of it, and that was exactly what I was looking for. So instead of waiting for it to dry, I'm using my heat gun to dry it. It's going to dry clear, but at some point when you put heat on it, if you heat it for long enough, it will start to bubble up a little bit. And that was another look that I was going for. I wanted this to be all bubbly and kind of, you know, like it was all oxidized and rusting, and that it would really start to take these other paints well. So I pulled out some more all-purpose inks, Tropical Lagoon and Thyme, and I started using my fingers once again to apply that over the creative medium. It liked to stick into the crevices, and it stuck right on the creative medium perfectly to start giving it that gorgeous coppery oxidized look. I added in some thyme, and it might have been a little bit too much to start, but I was able to blend it out pretty well. And knowing that I had some other colors to go, I wasn't really concerned that maybe I'd gotten too much on there. So then I took some Studio Glaze, and this is in black, and added that. And it is a different consistency, so it stuck into the creative medium crevices a little differently and really gave it that antiqued look that I was going for. Really, really aging that piece of copper well. Then to finish it off, I went back for some more Tropical Lagoon because I feel like when I look at copper that's oxidized really well, it has a lot of that kind of bluish color to it. So I really love the way that piece looked, and it didn't take any time to dry. So this next little bit was a little bit of an experiment. I took a piece of Tulle, and I was wondering what would happen if I added creative medium to it. Would it dry on the Tulle? How would it stay dried on the Tulle? How would it look, and how would it work? So I took the creative medium and I added some Tropical Lagoon to it to give it a color. And this is going to be translucent because the creative medium itself is translucent, as is the all-purpose ink. So now I've made a Tropical Lagoon shade of all-purpose of creative medium. And I just applied it to the Tulle using a stencil, just like I would if I was doing this on paper. Now, I think the key to this was that I spread it on with a piece of silicone mat underneath. This was probably the most important thing that I did because it allowed me to peel it up when it was finished, and it didn't stick to the silicone mat, and it stayed stuck to the Tulle. So after I let them air dry, I was pleasantly surprised to see that when I lifted it off, it all stuck to the Tulle. It remained pliable. It did not peel off. It was exactly what I hoped it would do. So while I was at it, I took some copper and mixed it with creative medium and just spread it onto some more Tulle without a stencil, and it worked equally as well. It kind of reminded me of snakeskin, which might be a really great application for another project. I was able to split and splice the Tulle just by ripping it, and it's really going to add a lot to this project. So as I was getting ready to assemble everything, I like to dry fit things together first and take a picture of it so I can work from a great arrangement. Sometimes I will dry fit it and let the project sit there for a couple of hours, maybe even a couple of days, and kind of move pieces around until I get it exactly the way I want it. I've spent so much time working on all these little pieces that I don't want to assemble it all together and then be disappointed with the way that it turned out. Each individual piece is so beautiful that the entire piece should be just as beautiful when it's all put together. So I'm using on-point glue to assemble everything. And this may not seem like an obvious choice because it is a very liquidy glue and it does not dry fast. But I think that for both of those reasons, it's a great glue to use. It allows me to move pieces around and shift things even a few minutes later if I need to. And I can just add more on-point glue if I feel like I don't have enough. So I put down my first two pieces, which were those background pieces of tulle. And then I started adding in my leaves. And as you can see, I am using a acrylic block to keep everything in place in between placements. This, especially with the tulle that didn't want to stay down, it was a really great thing to do. It kept everything in place. And then as I started working on the littler pieces towards the top, I was able to keep the bottom compressed and drying and sitting in place. So I had also taken some twine and added all-purpose ink in the lagoon and in thyme. So I had a few pieces that were colored, and I thought those would add a little bit of extra texture and some nice added interest behind some of the leaves. So you saw I added it to this little leaf here. And again, that advantage of the all-purpose glue where it didn't quite set yet. So I was able to lift it up and add some more glue because I didn't feel like it was stuck well enough. So then I can go ahead and add in all of my littler pieces, and I'm adding them on top of and below and in between the pieces of tulle. So that way I have lots and lots of layers and texture, and all these little pieces are showing up throughout the entire project. It really does give the eye a lot to look at. It's the kind of piece that you can display proudly, and people that come to visit will take a look at it and just really want to absorb all of the texture and the color and the layers that they're seeing in the project that you've created. So as I finish up my leaves here, I'm going to add in just a little bit more twine. And again, this is a technique that helps to call more attention to the element in front of it. So this helped to split up the tulle behind it and the leaf in front of it. So it's just a little thing, but it really does add a lot to the layout of the project. So once I have all of those pieces in place, I'm ready to go ahead and add in my sentiment. And I didn't do anything to the sentiment. It was a chipboard sentiment that came in a combo pack, and I just added it right to the front of the design. It doesn't have any distressing or anything to it. I really like the way it just pops compared to all of the muted fall colors behind it. So the last thing I did was add a few clear gems, and these really just reminded me of beautiful fall days where there's been a little bit of rain and there is a gorgeous smell in the air of all of the leaves that have fallen and the decay and the end of a beautiful season and another year. So I'll go ahead and add these on. Just to, again, give some more interest and give a little bit of idea of a wet and rainy fall day. Some of them went on the leaves, so don't be afraid to place them on top of other elements, not just on their own. I hope you enjoyed watching this creative journey and that it inspires you to create a beautiful fall-themed tag of your own. If you loved this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. I'd love to see you back here soon. I'll have more mixed media projects coming your way, but until next time, happy crafting.